Boldog új évet. This is Happy New Year in Hungarian. And that's how Hungarians are greeting each other as of electoral night in Hungary, living through indeed revolutionary times. Listen to our conversation with Luca Soltesz, our contributing editor from Budapest, as we discuss the revolution inside of Hungary and the impact of Hungarian revolution on the future of Europe and rekindling Central Eastern European cooperation.
Welcome to the Visegrad Insight podcast.
We bring you global experts on the future of democracy, security, and economy.
The leading voices from Central Europe and on Central Europe.
Hosted by editors of Visegrad Insight.
Powered by Respublika Foundation from Warsaw, Poland.
It's Tuesday, 14th of April 2026. Do you know how Hungarians say Happy New Year in Hungarian?
Boldog új évet.
Thank you. This is how apparently a number of people are greeting each other as of Sunday night. These are revolutionary times for not just Budapest, it's for the whole of country that voted in the last elections and gave a landslide 2/3 majority, constitutional majority for a startup party, a new party, Tisza, and Magyar, future prime minister. My name is Wojciech Przybylski. I'm editor-in-chief of Visegrad Insight.
And I'm Luca Soltesz. I'm a contributing editor.
Luca has just written her piece evaluating the substantial change, also seen from a generational perspective, that has been taking place in Hungary, claiming already before the electoral Sunday that Hungary has changed. There is a profound movement that we're going to explore in this podcast. And I've also been in Budapest over the weekend. On Sunday night, I've seen those thousands of people at the Danube Bank who were celebrating and starting to believe in what just have happened. But I still think many are coming into terms with the events of the last week and also what is just beginning. So let's begin. Let's start this conversation. And Luca, I wanted to hear your account of what's happening after the election Sunday, and specifically what's the sense of the streets and what's the sense in the political and public discourse about what just happened? Do Hungarians actually know what's happening in their own country?
Well, sort of. I think the first emotion was shock. I was spending the evening with some friends at home, and after talking to some other people who were in other places, everyone agreed that even when Orban was conceding, and he was talking about his electoral loss, everyone just stood in silence and tried to understand, because we couldn't believe our eyes, couldn't believe what was happening, and what was happening is real. Because for 16 years, we had built up a lot of hope that this could happen one day, but actually seeing it and feeling it and experiencing it is a completely different thing. After a couple hours, and after we could see that Tisza actually secured a 2/3 majority, we started to believe. But I think the country just needs a couple of weeks to actually realize what opportunity we've given ourselves. Because although it seemed impossible that Orbán could be defeated in the polling stations, this is what happened. Basically, people didn't fight with their guns or with any violent matter, but with their pens, and they just crossed on Tisza party, and we won. And it's still really hard to believe. Every morning, I check my phone. I check the official website of the electoral committee, and I just scroll down to see the country that is not in orange, Fidesz's color anymore, but in blue, which is Tisza's party. So it's still a bit of a shock, and we need time to process.
Right. You need time to process. The votes are being counted. Diaspora votes are coming in. The electoral results, nevertheless, is not going to change, except for maybe some percentage points. It's going to be a 2/3 majority, a landslide for Tisza, an expression of the public sentiment, political will, of course. But more than that, there is awakening of the civil society. We just hosted András Simor, former governor of the National Central Bank, who started tenure in 2007, and he held the office until 2013. So he stayed in office overlooking a political change in the beginning of the government of Orban in 2010. He's now retired. His participation in the election was like thousands of others through active participation and volunteering at the level that Hungarians never seen before. It's, in a way, it's something that you would have expected that Hungarians had, but in fact they have not experienced things like civil society renewal, civil society awakening, not even since 1989. The turnout was record high, but the turnout was record high and civil society participation was record high. I would even claim, since 1956, 70 years ago, with the Budapest uprising, the revolution that was squashed under Soviet tanks. This was the last time the nation has been awakened and organized and fighting for its freedom. This time, Luca, you pointed it very well, this was with their pens. This was a revolution of dignity, not of violence. There was electoral speech of Peter Magyar, who called for non-violent processing of that change on both sides, on the account of his own voters, but also equally on the account of government and all of the Fidesz supporters. But I have a question here to you. How exactly the Fidesz officials in the bubble, in an extremely big bubble of pro-government propaganda, are processing exactly the fact of what just happened, and that their prime minister conceded power, conceded to Peter Magyar, and he said he's going to accept essentially the role of the leader of the opposition, with substantially smaller number of seats in the new term of the parliament. What is the level of recognition on their, to the extent that we can say and we know, to what just happened? What do they say?
Well, basically, what we could see is, first of all, silence. Many of the politicians, Fidesz politicians, actually congratulated their counterparts, but many of them stayed silent, even online, and they didn't do the official phone call that is usually being done. And
you mean the one-party districts, one mandate, one seat districts?
Yes.
Those races, 106 out of 199 seats are through the one seat districts. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And now what we could see is a very interesting wave of politicians and media personnel, and maybe some people even call them propagandists, show up at the doorsteps of free media that they try to crush over the 16 years, and try to give a comment of how they feel. Some of them even are trying to blame each other, and some of them are just trying to give an account what had happened. Just reading a couple of them and listening to a couple of them, the official explanation for now is that people got bored of 16 years of Orban, which is obviously, can be an excuse, but that wasn't what people actually voted against. It was because of corruption. It was because of how Orban became a Russian puppet. It was because people didn't feel like the country represented them anymore. So boredom can be one explanation, but it's definitely not the entire truth. What is a reappearing topic is that Helmut Kohl also lost after 16 years, and they're trying to compare Orban to him. Interesting analogy, definitely. What we know so far is that Orban will have a meeting with all Fidesz politicians 2 weeks from now, so on the 28th of April, to try to make sense of what had happened. But they are just very careful of saying anything concrete. Besides some media personnel who are blaming each other, Fidesz politicians so far are standing strong together, but they didn't really give account to the things that Orban had actually done as a mistake.
You mentioned what was so important in the elections. I've been reading opinion polls, one of them by Atlas Intel global polling station, quite reliable when you compare their opinion polling from before elections and the actual outcome. And one of the questions they tested was, what are the voting issues? What are the issues that are decisive for the voters? And number one, close to 50% of choice was inflation, the rising cost of living, and that was a big issue. Next to it was corruption, clearly somehow interlinked. Then there was the question of the rule of law, essentially, equal treatment towards the law. Healthcare, there was still in its around between 30-40% of respondents, and then closing on 30, I think 29 was the European policy of the government. Anything else, and there were a number of other issues, were not above the 25% threshold, which I think is somehow telling that these 5 issues were decisively more important for the electorate overall. And of course, then we can see we should be looking at specific electoral groups. I wanted your commentary on that, but I also wanted you personally to tell, and if your cat wants to share it as well, you can hear him in the background, or is it her? I think our listeners and audience will only appreciate there are more of us in the studio. What was the reason that you chose? What is the reason your generation chose predominantly? If you have a hunch, you don't need to have a specific research. Just tell your story, which I'm sure is so instructive for our listeners.
Before I give you an answer, I'm just going to let my cat out, although she has strong opinions, apparently. So, from a generational point, the thing is, I don't remember Hungary without Orban. I was 11 when he was elected for his second term, which was in 2010. I was actually born during the first Orban government. And a lot of people had the same feeling, that they don't really know what democracy is. Orban really slowly tried to demolish it, and we couldn't remember actually a country where the country is for us and not for the only elite circle of the government. We experienced, for me, it was somewhat okay. For many people after me, an education system that was not fit for modern times. Healthcare, obviously, is a general problem, because no matter how old you are, sometimes you go to the hospital for whatever reasons. But in general, what had happened is that Orban was pushing for an agenda, both internationally and domestically, that wasn't aligned with what this generation thinks anymore. We have the opportunity to study abroad. I also did study abroad. We could travel to other European countries very cheap. And also, we don't need like a visa. We can just cross the border, and for that reason, we can also see how others live. We see how Austrians live. We see how Germans live. We see how Polish people live, and after a while, we realize that actually Hungary is just going downhill. And whatever the government is suggesting is not the reality that we see. And also, instead of actually improving our lives. Orban only gave out loans to people and to people having children, and it made actually the housing crisis even worse because they got loans for housing, and we are at a point where a young person is hardly able to buy any property, which is a very big thing in Hungarian culture. Maybe some other Western Europeans don't think it's a big deal, but for us in Hungarian culture, you made it if you have your house, basically. So for us, it's still it's a very deep need, basically. So what had happened is that Orban was saying something on the media that was completely opposite of what we were seeing and what our reality was. And he, instead of trying to come up with some reforms or trying to open up to young voters, he just basically said that you should be thankful because we don't have migrants. Okay, well, thank you. Like what did he expect? No. And also, he only suggested that young people are always revolting against the establishment. And, well, it might be true, but it's not the entire truth.
Hi, if you're enjoying this episode, why not subscribe to Visegrad Insight? This gives you access to all our latest content online, as well as to our live and online events. You can use our special promo code for Visegrad Insight podcast listeners to get 35% off. Just go to visegradinsight.eu, choose a yearly subscription, and apply code Visegrad35. And now, back to the podcast.
The youngest cohort was decisively pro-change. Youngest cohort was definitely not voting for Fidesz, but across most of age generations, age cohorts, Fidesz was losing. I think it was only between 40 and 49 or 49, 50, something, a very limited or just one cohort that, according to opinion polls, was voting for Fidesz. And it looked like, I think there is a headline by one of the think tanks in Hungary that basically Fidesz, the government, got trapped in its own information bubble. Political Capital just released a report like that. I do believe it's a recurring pattern for any government structure that tries to go the path of autocracy, and it of course is efficient at some point, but autocratic tendency tends not to replicate itself. This is why we put also this emphasis here at Visegrad Insight on the intergenerational aspect of democratic process. I mean, the offer needs to be good from the point of view exactly of those who come in to the public. And so thanks, Luca, for sharing this specific perspective. I wanted to touch base now on what's next. There are lots of questions about what is being expected, when the government will be set up, what are the promises and the first expectations in terms of the new government. And clearly, it's not going to be boring. Not that Mr. Orban was boring by any account, he wasn't. But I think there are some entertaining moves we've seen on the stage on the evening night. Minister of Health designate, or shadow Minister of Health, had some crazy moves. We won't show it here. We don't have the technical possibility to mix, and we usually don't do that for the video. But if you haven't seen that, just Google, go and search it online on any platforms. That was not a traditional Czardas dance that this guy was displaying. So tell us a little bit about also what to expect of the upcoming team. What are the promises? What is unfolding? And we'll do it in a nutshell. And of course, we're not doing a crystal ball long-term prognosis, but the key features of what we know is going to take place now. What should we be mindful of?
Well, what we know is that Magyar wants to remove a lot of heads of different government organizations, including the president, because he claims that the president didn't actually acted as a president, but as a sort of an enabler of the Orbán government. He didn't stand up for human rights, and I agree. So what will happen is that tomorrow, so on Wednesday, the 15th, Magyar and other heads of party members are meeting the president, and then the president will ask, hopefully Magyar, to try to make a cabinet. The last votes will be counted by Saturday. So after that, we will have a bigger picture of who voted and in what demographics, and I think that's going to be very interesting. So far, we think that the youth voted by the highest numbers, but we don't have concrete numbers yet. So we will see some just procedural happenings. What we also know is that Magyar promised Donald Tusk, the Polish people, that his visit will be to Warsaw. That's also a tradition that Hungarian prime minister's first visit is always to Warsaw to honor the Polish-Hungarian friendship. His next visit will be to Vienna because we are neighboring countries and we also have a good relationship with the Austrians, and then to Brussels. Magyar's first international agenda is to bring back EU funds that has been frozen. And so far, what I can see from reactions from the European Commission and some other European leaders, the EU is also aiming for that. It's essential to bring back those funds because we don't exactly know how the Hungarian economy is and what state it is in. But what we know is that it's not good. And he definitely needs the funds so that he can move on with his other policies.
You mean state or public funds, essentially, because the Hungarian economy is more or less in stagnation. If we look on the public record, it's the level of public debt and the level of essentially how coffers are empty that will be one of the first order of business for the new government. But the economy, I think we can say it is bound for rebounds and
yeah. I mean, after during election night, forint has reached new heights against euro. And yesterday, Magyar had his international press conference, and the moment he started speaking, the forint reached a 4-year record. So far so good. The other thing that he really needs to hurry with is getting people or getting the prosecution, the High Court, start investigations against politicians. It's not just a promise. Hungarians do need to see politicians and other oligarchs behind bars, or at least during court proceedings, because otherwise we cannot heal. After 1989, the documents about Russian agents were never released, and I think that it's essential to see who stole what, who did what, especially with the Russian connections with Foreign Minister Péter Szijjártó and Viktor Orbán. We need to see what's going on exactly, and I think he needs to hurry up with that, because yesterday it was revealed that although we thought that Péter Szijjártó is already on its way to the east, it turned out that he was still in Budapest, but shredding documents. So he needs to
shredding documents in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Exactly, as we know, related to sanctions, EU sanctions against Russians. So he needs to give space to the court to do their job, because obviously as a politician, and he also said it himself, as a politician he doesn't want to put pressure and he doesn't want to put people in jail himself, but he needs to give space to a free and independent court and prosecution. So that's the two things that he needs to hurry with. The other things, I think, can wait. And he also sort of tried to manage the expectations that after a week, there's not going to be Euro membership. There's not going to be a better healthcare. There's not going to be a better education. These are long-term reforms that need to be set, but the work has to begin with these two.
But since you mentioned, there are certain promises that have been made by 2030 to join the Eurozone. That is the expected date from the political program of the Tisza party, and there is no hard opposition. Even within the government, there wasn't strong opposition previously in Orban circle. That wasn't simply a political declaration that Hungary would do that. And with a number of reforms, with consolidation of public finances, if that happens and is achieved, it will be only natural Hungary to join. There is an announcement to join the European Prosecutorial Office, which is also an element to aid transparency of the public procurement, public funding of investment from the point of view of securing the European process. There is also a promise to honor the European extradition agreement, but basically the requests of other EU member states being part of the same legal context, legal environment, acquis communautaire, to extradite on the request of other court systems in Europe, which is particularly important for the two fugitives, former politicians who have found their asylum so far in Hungary. Not the only ones, politicians who found their asylum in Hungary. We have Mr. Gruevski of North Macedonia, former prime minister, also residing in Hungary on, basically giving the freedom of life and economic activity here in Budapest as a political ally to Viktor Orban. It is expected that a number of those the directions will be cut, there are also promises of not only cutting off from the Russian GRU, Secret Service, strategic corruption meddling, but also to extinguish Russian energy dependency by 2035, if I'm not mistaken. That is the general plan, with number of people in the government being strong, or those who are expected to be in the government, and they've been again on stage on the election night, like Anita Orban or István Kapitány, who have a strong portfolio in energy sector. Anita Orban formerly working for the Fidesz government in the early years and then quit. She's a recognized energy expert in the field. István Kapitány is a former vice president of Shell Global, responsible for downstream. Clearly, one of the strongest portfolios Hungary can put together is a combined knowledge of not only those two, but one of those two going into foreign policy, and the other to energy or economy, will comprise of a strong focus on getting Hungary ahead of what is today's global problem with energy supplies and energy security. Anything that I should or we should focus, looking, to what sort of human capital is in a way, and political capital is brought into this government. Where do you place your hopes for, policy priorities? If you could name one or a few.
Well, I think the goal of 2035 is very realistic, and that's why they stated this instead of saying that they would come off of Russian energy by 2027 or before that. Yesterday, watching his international press conference, he mentioned that Magyar really wants to open up to other markets. And he also mentioned that in his victory speech that he wants to build up a good relationship with neighboring countries, which not only hints at Ukraine, there are a lot to unpack there, but also with Croatia, because the Adria pipeline is definitely a way forward. So I think they are working towards it, and even if it happens by 2035, still we won't be as dependent on Russian energy as we did before. And also we can see that Hungary's dependence on Russian energy was not because that was our only way forward, although Orban always said it. It was because of something else, because of some other relations with Russia. And I think it's starting to deteriorate, especially that Russia put Hungary on a non-friendly country list. so definitely it's going to change.
Speaking of regional cooperation, that is so much important. Hungary has been at a number of occasions playing hardball with different neighbors, not just Ukraine. At the same time, it's quite vulnerable and in a specific situation where large part of the Hungarian minority, with close ties, very well maintained over the decades of previous governments, is residing in the neighboring countries, which can turn, I believe, into a strong economic asset, also not just diplomatic or political asset when it comes to elections. But engagement with neighbors is of key importance. Looking beyond this minority issue, there is also this regional cooperation that Mr. Magyar has promised. This is the Visegrad revival. In a way dead because Mr. Orban exploited it to the level of basically non-usability, especially from the Polish perspective. But now he links it in one sentence with Poland, with renewing relations with Poland. And I think Poland cautiously, but most likely is going to respond, perhaps extending the Visegrad as originally has been planned to connect also other EU countries of the region in a grouping. In 2 weeks' time, there will be Three Seas Initiative Summit in Dubrovnik in Croatia, as Croatia is presiding over this policy framework, connecting European Union member states over policies that would amplify economic relations, economic security, and investment in infrastructure, energy, logistics, digital, you name it. The elections in Hungary are definitely an enabler of regional cooperation and return of something that Europe needs with all the economic progress taking place in the region, and I believe Hungary catching up quickly. Also the political weight and coordination on the future of Europe. But that would be, I guess, a subject of another episode.
What I would like to add to that is that he mentioned that he wants Central European bloc, to have a strong Central European bloc, even if it means not just the V4, but also maybe Austria, Romania, Croatia. And although he is committed to good EU relations, I think the dynamics within the Council could change if this Central European bloc has a voice, and a stronger voice, and not just illiberal anti-EU voice, but a constructive one. So that's definitely something to look out for.
Thank you, Luca. Thank you also for listening. Stay tuned for more updates. Read our text. Read Luca's account also on Visegrad Insight website. My own take on also how much this election result poses certain challenge to European Union. Now there are no more excuses with Viktor Orban to move towards a bolder power Europe. But that is, again, a subject of our further conversations. Luca, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And that's all from this week's episode of the Visegrad Insight podcast, bringing you the leading voices from Central Europe and on Central Europe.
Make sure to subscribe, and we'll be in touch next week.